Hey there, fellow YouTubers, it's Frank Bush here again. Wanted to show you my 10-pound survival kit. And this, when weighed on a scale, just comes just shy of 10 pounds. I just call it 10-pound kit. I wanted to show you the different items of it and what I'd carry. These are all designed to be worn on a belt. It doesn't have to be into a backpack. Typically I wear a belt, so if I grab this kit and go, I can. I've got a 1-liter stainless steel canteen for water. Given that it's stainless steel, I can throw it on the fire and also use it to cook food inside, that kind of thing. I've got an SOG folding shovel and it's, you know, with a pick on it and that kind of thing. Sorry. I believe it's important to have a certain set of tools for when you go out into the woods for any length of time. Just for long-term survival if worst case scenario ends up happening. This is a half-length Kershaw machete I own. This thing's great for batoning wood. I also have a ferrous rod attached to my knives typically. So you can see they throw a spark, you know, that kind of thing. So, like I say, designed to all be worn on the tip. I'll show you my fire kit and stuff in a minute, but we'll just go through the larger tools. This is a small, solid SOG again, hatchet set. It's solid through the handle. That's sharp like a razor blade. It's got good weight to it though for a small one, but not too much where it's going to be burdensome on the belt. And you can see belt loops that go through the back and that kind of thing, right? All my kit has that really. For the fact of quite often I'd go out without carrying any type of firearm, I also carry a bear mace, which is lightweight and it's always good if you're in a bad situation. It's worth having. I have 550 paracord. One with the bright stuff, so when you're in the bush and you set this stuff down, sometimes it can just disappear, if you will. Going with a brighter color, as long as you're not having to do any concealment, you know, stuff, any sear stuff or any of that. So needless to say, I've got it with a carabiner where I can just clip that on and just carry it with me. I also have multi-tool. Multi-tool comes with a bunch of different heads. Typically saws and knives are the two main ones that I focus on. You know, but everybody's seen multi-tools. They know the types of things you get on them. I've got an SOG folding saw. Not necessarily the best, but it's still a half decent saw for what it is. The fact that, in my mind, having a knife, a saw, and an axe are probably the three most important things you can have in the woods. Because you can build shelters and other things, but you need the tools to start with, and if you're having to make primitive tools, that can make things far more difficult. Once water's been cooked in my canteen, I carry another disposable, super lightweight, you know, just enough for once the water's cooled down, I can carry some extra water if I need to. Then I have my fire and snare kit. So, in my fire and snare kit, I carry a char tin for people that are familiar with these kinds of things, and I've got some char cloth that I've made sitting into it. If you throw a spark into this type of material, it becomes an ember very easily. You add it to a bird's nest and you can make fires. It's also got charred material other than just cloth where I've charred, I believe this was oak bark or something along that lines, but where I've charred off natural material as well and thrown spark into it and able to start a fire. In essence, every time you make a fire, if you're running low on any of the char material, the fire you're making, you have to cook more for the next batch. So when you go to throw your sparks into tinder, if you will, and you know, that kind of thing, you're always thinking about the next fire you're going to make. And having a tinder box like this allows you to really make fires over the long term if you need to in a survival situation. Let's see what else I got in here. I've got a snare kit. I made these a while back. I've got 7 locking snares, which there's YouTube videos on how to make those kinds of things, and 5 non-locking snares for doing on squirrel poles and those kinds of things, where you just want to set them up quick, and you know, you don't want to spook the squirrel with having a locking mechanism or anything. They're a small animal, so needless to say, having the non-locking ones is always handy to have. That's made out of picture frame wire, and that way you get strength, and it's not a solid piece of wire that can, if it gets bent and snapped as the animal acts frantically, that it's not going to snap the snare wire quite as easily. I also carry another flint and steel, or ferrous rod steel, as part of my fire kit. Inside here I carry cotton pads, and I have 2 different flavors of those, if you will. I've got ones that I can throw a spark into. That's just a normal soft cotton pad. You can see where I've pulled pieces off in the past. But you can throw a spark into this and it'll set a fire, but it won't burn for very long. So what I've also made is fire cakes. What I did was I got a large candle and melted it down into a pot, and then I took pads, the cotton pads, and dipped them into it, and then let them set out on some parchment paper and cool, and you can see they look just like a cotton pad would, but they're, you know, far firmer, if you will. And if you when you use the soft version, you can start your fire off. The flame won't burn very long, but it'll burn long enough to ignite one of these. And one of these hard little cakes will burn like a candle then, because it's really just wax and cotton. So you can get about a 20-minute burn out of these. If you're in a wet environment where it's difficult to actually dry the wood out first that you're about to burn, having this kind of stuff in your kit, at least for short term anyways, is always an advantage to have. It'll make starting the fire far easier to do. I recommend, for the size and weight of them, that people carry those around. I also have I've got a fishing net. I don't carry the ring of it per se, but this can be used. This is like a, you know, fairly long net, but it can be used in small creeks where you set it at one end of the creek with a weir, and you know, you walk upstream and kind of bat at the creek and drive the fish into the net. And it allows you to catch lots of fish in a short period of time. So I don't carry the ring that would keep the net open per se. To me, that's just something I would make on the fly out of a branch, or, you know, something along that lines. So that gives you a rough, and oh yeah, and of course, you know, the standard. I always carry a couple Bics with me. You know, you want to have it where it's ease of use, but if you end up going in a longer term, you want to have the tools that you can survive for longer periods of time with. So having a snare kit and a fire kit, and a lot of the tools like the axe, the saw, you know, different knives and that kind of thing, it can really make your survival situation far more comfortable. There's one more knife I have, which I'll be right back. Oh, I forgot to grab it. Sorry for the delay. I use this knife a fair bit and carry it with me, so when I go off into parks and other things, I always like to have this set with me. This is my kind of more compact set. So this is a Bear Grylls knife, which I've found to be quite a good tool. It did originally come with a ferrous rod that was connected in. I lost that almost immediately. The way that they designed it, it just falls out of the knife if you're in the bush. So I went and got another ferrous rod. Most of my knives I tend to strap a ferrous rod to. I can do the sparking off these as well, right? So I like to have multiple ways to make fire, especially living in Canada. It's a colder environment. You don't want to have to piss around with trying to make a fire if it's 2 degrees outside or below, right? So this is my main kind of bush knife. I have some paracord 550 that goes on it as well. This is a solid sheath body, so the paracord can wrap around it and stays quite firm and everything else. All together I carry about 100-150 foot of paracord with me, as you saw, you know, from the other cord I carry. I'm of the mindset of if you're ever in an emergency situation, you're probably better off to just build yourself a shelter. And I've done previous videos where you can make your own cordage out of roots from trees and that kind of thing. That can be time consuming. If you do like a raised A-frame shelter or something out in the woods, it only takes a couple hours and to build. And if you already have the cordage material to help with that build, you can cut that time down to an hour, hour and a half. You're not having to dig through the ground for half an hour just to even start. So I always recommend kind of having the stuff. As a side piece, I have a bracelet that stays strapped to here that I put on when I go. But this bracelet is I think there's 12 foot of paracord that exists within that. That's the 550 as well. No, that's good bush-proven ropes, right? To me, I believe that with this basic kit, separate from if you wanted to carry a backpack that you had, say, a hammock and some tarps or something in, this kind of kit would give you enough tools where if you're savvy with what to eat for plants and you're able to snare and trap and hunt animals, have some shelter building skills, this kind of kit is, like I say, lightweight, can be worn on a hip, and you could probably survive for long periods of time having these types of tools with you. Cheers, thank you.